Welcome to the Hair Metal Rules Podcast, where we celebrate all things 80s hair and glam rock. Join us as we dive into the world of spandex, big hair, and killer guitar solos with your host, Big J. From iconic bands like Motley Crue and Def Leppard to the lesser-known gems of the era like Lillian Axe and Babylon AD, we cover them all. So grab your hairspray and leather pants because it's time to rock out with the Hair Metal Rules Podcast. What's going on, man?
You got the shirt, brother. I love it. Thanks for representing, man. I appreciate you.
No problem. I told my wife, I was like, I'm talking to Mark today. I got to put my Mark Duda shirt on. So
awesome, man. Awesome.
I had to make sure it won't in the dryer. You know how it is.
Yeah. Well, look, man, you come a long way, man, just like me. And a couple of rock and roll lifers shooting the shit ought to be cool, man.
That's exactly right. I'm trying. That's all
I love what you're doing, man. I think that's great. It's great for the scene, man. And it's great for dudes like me and for the music because, there's so much music out there and all everybody needs to do on some of this great shit they haven't heard is just put it in and push play and you'll see what we're talking about, you know?
I go for the bands everybody knows. I do that, but I try to put some obscure bands that never got huge because in my opinion, people don't know about them per se, and they've never really heard their music. So
yeah,
and the music is great. The whole 80s scene, the whole 80s decade, was just a great decade to be alive and to listen to music, in my opinion.
Yeah, so my origin actually, what a lot of people don't know, because I actually really started to sell records as a solo artist in like 17, but I made 5 albums with a band called The Handful. And The Handful, our drummer was, for the last 2 albums, was Bobby Rondinelli. And Bobby Rondinelli was in Rainbow. At the same time, Joe Lynn Turner was in. So he's on like I Surrender and all that stuff. Bobby also plays on a Black Sabbath album, Cross Purposes. And he played on the Quiet Riot records that Frankie Banali didn't play on. So he was kind of, a lot of people were interested in what The Handful was doing because Bobby was in the band. And
right.
We also had Jimmy Bones, who still plays for me and produces me as a guitar player. And Jimmy's from the Baltimore band Kix. He's a Baltimore rocker. And so a lot of people know about Kix. And he did a stint with Joan Jett and the Blackhearts and a stint with Blondie. And so I've been surrounded by people in the scene and significant folks in the scene and recorded with a lot of these people for years. But for some reason, it was an EP I made in 2017, which is this one, Month of Sundays, where I was I decided to try out my own sound, which you've heard my stuff. It's like a mix between like, that catchy 80s stuff, but I also love for traditional rock and roll. So I'll throw in a little doo-wop stuff here and there, or I'll throw in a little heavy 70s stuff, right? And people are like, oh shit, what's that? And that's my sound that I'm trying to create,
Well, it's funny you say that. I have it actually written down here. I said, listening to your music, I hear doo-wop.
Yeah.
I hear some old surf rock.
Yeah, for sure.
Sound. I hear some rockabilly.
Yes.
I hear a little country twinge from every now and then.
Yes. Yeah.
You got a great mixture in the music you play. It's great.
Thank you. Yeah, I cut my teeth as a fan. Molly Hatchet, Lynyrd Skynyrd, Outlaws, like Southern rock when I was young was really big. Blackfoot, Ricky Medlock, and all that. And I kind of, I learned to sing listening to, Danny Joe Brown and Ronnie Van Zant. It's just that I'm from the North. So I get a little bit of it in there and then it's my own voice. And that's never left me, but it's what makes me a little bit different, And I got to tell you, a lot of this sound that's on Month of Sundays, and then, we continued. This is my best-selling record with any band so far, which is really encouraging because it's my last one. And this album is about the decade or so that I lived in the East Village in New York City. And at that time, the scene was all about rockabilly bands, guys like Brian Setzer or Johnny Thunders on guitar, and bands like the Cramps and the New York Dolls and Joan Jett and the Dead Boys and things like that. And so it's like what I write now. I eventually got to the point where I was like, I'm not selling a lot of records with an all-star band. Let me write what I want to hear, a mixture of everything I heard and liked, and really a lot of those influences that I caught when I lived downtown. Right, I lived a block from CBGB's in the East Village, and that stuff was hot back then. And so I got to be a part of a lot of that went on, but I wasn't releasing records at that time. But I was fortunate enough to make a lot of friends because I was around the scene. Folks knew who I was. So when it was time to make these records, on the Month of Sundays album, my rhythm section is Kenny Aronson, who's really well known, played with Sammy Hagar, plenty of other dudes. He's in the Yardbirds now. Tommy Price on drums. He's on every Billy Idol hit there ever was, and he was Joan Jett's drummer. And on the second album, I used Tommy Price as well. I've got Jimmy Bones from Kix playing guitar. I've got Tommy Price from Billy Idol playing drums. I've got Kazim Sultan actually playing bass on that. And he does all the Todd Rundgren, all the Utopia stuff. He's on Meatloaf, Bat Out of Hell. And so when it was time for me to put out my own albums, I had hung around the scene long enough where I had enough friends where I could say, hey, do me a favor and play on this, because I can't really pay those guys what they're worth, but they love the music and they want to be part of it, which was the first thing that made me think maybe I'm onto something. These guys are willing to take their time and talent and their names and attach it to my project. And I've got guests on these records, like Bobby Rondinelli guests on the record, Cheetah Chrome from the Dead Boys, who's considered the godfather of punk guitar. He guests on the records. I've played with so many other guys over the years. I played with Pat Travers, back to that Southern rock, blues rock stuff that's right up my alley. And listen, I was ready to just, keep being a sideman, keep going to concerts, keep writing songs just for my friends and family to hear. And then things changed for me in 2017, and I started to make a name for myself. And now I've got 2 records out since then, and using the same band and same producer, which is Jimmy Bones. Again, Kix, Joan Jett, Blondie. He's even on the Jonas Brothers records. He's just a pro's pro. And we're 10 songs into pre-production on the next record, and we hope people like it just as much, if not more, than Bodega Flowers. So God is good, man, for whatever reason. People say it's a good thing you hung in there long enough, but I think you would understand that we do this because we can't help it. You and I are rock and roll lifers, right? We're around the scene. We do what we do, whether it's writing songs or getting the band's exposure from a journalistic angle, or the photo and online journalism you do. We do it because we can't help it. It's not like one of these things where I'm never going to give up. It's who I am. It's what I do, and that's all there is to it.
It's funny. I have a routine every morning. I always try to post 2 videos and I post a story. That's my daily routine. My videos are getting kind of low on my phone. I need to find some more videos, and there's so many out there. Like Brittany Fox, they have so many videos, but people remember
great tunes. Yeah, great tunes. I saw some docking this morning, and you hit a lot of my sweet spots too, brother. I see the Leather Wolf. I see the Bullet Boys. Babylon AD, Shark Island, like all that stuff, man, is a part of my musical DNA too.
My claim to music, and I say it on my podcast all the time, was flipping through Rip magazine and Metal
Oh
Edge
yeah,
magazine and seeing little ads for a new band that's coming out. Like say Heaven's Edge or Hurricane Alice, Shark Island, watching
yeah,
Headbangers Ball every Saturday night and seeing, and
absolutely.
a lot of times once the band got recognized on Headbangers Ball, then the next thing you know, they're in rotation on the Hard 30 or the
That's
Hard
right.
60, or a hip clip of the week, if you remember that on MTV,
Of
or
course,
Dial
of course.
MTV, and MTV helped a lot of these bands get recognized. Of course, you look in a magazine and you see a picture of Leatherwolf. You never knew what Leatherwolf looked
I think
like.
Street Ready is the name of the one album, dude. I played that. I had a tape in my 72 Mustang, man, and I played it until it squeaked, and then I bought it again. What a
That,
great record. People
yeah,
don't know it. So I'm
yeah.
thrilled to see you posting
I
that.
mean, that album had I Am the Thunder, and I actually have the album
Just
somewhere.
killer. Yeah,
Yeah,
just
it was
killer. And I
great.
hadn't seen that. Even though I played the shit out of it, I've forgotten about it over the years. And so that's one of the things I love about what you do, because you're taking me back and I'm like, shit, I haven't heard that band in a while. Like I pulled out a Grim Reaper album the other day, See You in Hell, and I'm like, oh, these songs are so good. Even the
Yeah,
ballads, that people because they were a heavy band, but they had some great ballads, and
yeah.
they had that real Judas Priest type of influence, and I had them out the other day, and you're a Badlands guy, aren't you?
Yeah, oh
Jake
yeah.
Gillen, those
Oh
couple albums.
yeah.
I never understood. Now I know that Ray Gillen it is, and Jakey Lee. I know that Ray died young, but I never understood why that was one album, like the first Badlands album. I never understood why that record wasn't bigger, man, because
I
it's
don't.
amazing.
I don't know. I don't know either, because Jakey Lee still had the same guitar style he had. It's a little bit different than when he was with Ozzy, for the simple fact that Badlands was a lot more blues oriented.
That's right.
Their sound, but
You showed his range, though.
Jakey Lee went on to form, I believe it was Red Dragon Cartel after
I
he left
love it, and
Badlands.
it's slept on, bro. Not a lot of people are hearing it, and I think some of these guys are having, and this is where guys like you come in, I think, because some of these guys, they're still playing. They have new projects. You talk about guys like Jakey Lee, guys like George Lynch, phenomenal new music, and it's like outside of maybe a station or two on satellite radio. There's not enough avenues to get their music heard.
It's
um
funny you say that. I interviewed Jaron, the bass player that's playing in Lynch Mob right now, and he's also the bass player in Heaven's Edge.
cool.
And I
Also
wanted to,
great.
oh yeah, I wanted
Heaven's
to
Edge, bro.
play a song that I didn't want to sit there and play uh, a Lynch Mob song from back in the late '80s, early '90s, because he didn't play on that album. So I played. It's off their album Babylon. I never knew Lynch Mob had so many albums
They
past the first
Yeah.
two, because I
George is
never,
busy. He's
yeah.
he stays busy. Yeah.
And he's teamed up with Michael Sweet from Striper, and
Yes.
made albums. Crazy stuff.
Phenomenal
Yeah,
talent, those Michael Sweet as well. I mean, and usually guys with that many miles on them, meaning have toured that much,
yeah,
they hit their 40s and 50s, and they're starting to maybe drop the songs down half a step, but not him.
yeah. He can still
He's
hit
one of
those
those guys
ranges.
that's really held on to his voice, and that's remarkable to me, because I think people forget, like, people out there, people goof on Vince Neil or whatever. To me, Vince Neil is one of the greatest lead singers of all time. The man is like 64 years old.
Yes.
your body's your instrument when you're a singer. And unfortunately, not everybody's blessed with the same amount of longevity. But there are certain guys out there like Michael Sweet, that man, he's still right where he was. Kip Winger's right there. I heard Gary Sharon doing some acoustic stuff. The other day, it was a recent post that my wife had forwarded to me. And, it was more than words, because that's what people want to hear. It was him and Nuno, but he's not missing a note. And all Nuno's harmonies are on. So some of these guys are, they're like, it's like Tom Brady playing quarterback at 46. You really, really have to take care of yourself, and you have to be blessed to be able to perform like that at an older age. And so, they say things go in cycles. And I mean, I have a show that I co-host on Zingo TV, which is part of Hulu, that's called Club Tracks. And I try and get the younger bands on, because there are younger bands that are doing this type of music, hard rock, what we would call heavy metal, not heavy metal, but what was called heavy metal when we were growing up, right?
Not like throat grunting.
Yeah, like I'm not down on that. And I don't, I'm not dismissing anybody's music. Everybody's entitled to their taste, but I like singing. So, we had a band on there a couple of weeks ago called Red Voodoo, who's like Sammy Hagar's kind of taking these guys under their wings. They're in their early 20s, and they've got a great sound. And there's bands out there, and you really don't even have to look that hard to find them. But the record companies and the promoters aren't pushing that sound. And I wonder, because things seem to run in cycles, I think, when that's going to come back around again. And I hope I'm still here for it,
Me too.
But there's so much out there. And yeah, man, I love listening to, I love logging on to Instagram. First of all, for me, just to read the emails from the fans and have people ask me questions about songs I wrote 20 years ago and things like that. It's really like, that's the reward, because I've never made much money, but knowing that people hear themselves in a song you wrote, or they remember your music, or, I've been listening to this all day at the barbecue, man, that stuff is so rewarding to hear. I log in and I do that, and I look at what you post and a couple other people, because it makes me feel good. And so I feel like when we talk topically about what songwriters are concerned with these days, a lot of times, and I don't want to sound like the get off my lawn guy, but our music wasn't about like violence or greed or putting somebody down, or a diss track or something like that. It was fun, it was to have fun, and growing up in the New York area, to me, it was like, man, if you weren't into Kiss, you didn't know what was, you didn't know what from what, because we've all got Kiss in our DNA up here, along with Johnny Thunders and the Cramps and the Rockabilly and all that stuff that I kind of represent on my records. But I really think that's feel good music, man. And so is doo-wop, incidentally, and a lot of that stuff. That's right. I mean, you put that stuff on, and to me, like, you got to be dead inside to not crack a smile,
Yeah, like you mentioned Stray Cats. I was Stray Cat and Strut, and I'm a ladies man. I remember that song back in the 80s. That was earlier 80s, but I loved Stray Cats. And, you were talking about music these days. I was talking to Adam Holland. He played in a band called Valentine.
Okay.
And they had an album that came out toward the end of the 80s, when grunge was getting ready to
when they flipped the switch and you had to be miserable to be cool. Yeah.
But he said that more people know about Valentine now because of social media than they did in 1989 when the album came out.
Because you level the playing field, right? It doesn't cost you anything to post that up there. And it's true. And like, you kind of give the power back to the people a little bit.
I mean, you're surprised how many people on Instagram I mean, they had one song on MTV. It was called "No Way," and but that was toward the end of it, and hair metal was phasing out. But he's like, it surprises me how many people know that song, and
Yeah,
know all the words to the song.
that's right. They may not, even if they don't know who it is, they know the song. Yeah.
Yeah, and you're getting recognition now. It might be 40 years later. No, you're not making any money off of somebody saying, "Hey, man, I
But
remember
that's
Valentine."
rewarding. People are talking
Yeah,
about something you did 40 years ago. And if that don't make you feel good, I don't know what will. So that's where I try and find my rewards too.
sure.
I sell enough records to keep going, but barely. And again, a switch flipped in me a few years ago where I decided instead of, I was doing the Handful was really a hard rock band, more 70s influence, I would call like, Gasoline and, Sweaty Balls rock,
Yeah,
and
sure.
I decided, that was cool and everything, but you look out at the audience and it's all dudes, and I decided, hold on a second, there's something wrong here, man.
Yeah,
Let's get some girls at the shows,
right.
let's write something that people can dance to. Let's write something that'll stick in your head. Not let's write something where I can show off this riff I wrote, because that's not what it's about. Let's tell stories that remind people of themselves and the good times and all that, and that's worked for me. So I'm hoping that's working for other people too. And I appreciate you catching on to it. I mean, that's the
Oh
whole
yeah.
reason I do this thing too. And I post my videos and my songs up there. And I don't let a letter go unanswered. I don't let an email go unanswered. I appreciate anything the fans do, because it's so important. The other day I meant to talk to you about this too. There's an album that my wife and I used to play. Now, I met my wife many, many years ago. She was my prom date, and I'm not going to tell you what year that was because I don't want to age myself here. But we used to listen to the album No Respect by Vane constantly. And for 4 or 5 summers straight, man. No Respect, Beat the Bullet. Oh, what a phenomenal effing album, man. And another one to me where it's like Badlands to me, or like Babylon AD, or some of these where I'm like, how the hell is Davey Vane not, as well known as Vince Neil, or some of these guys? And I don't know, man. Like, you got to chalk a lot of it up to luck, because you listen to a record like that. I mean, the songwriting's phenomenal. A lot of people compared it to White Lion at the time. I get it. But White Lion was huge, and Vane wasn't really. Like, Vane was a Hollywood strip bang.
Well, I'll
Um,
tell you, I'll tell you a little secret. If you'll listen to the next episode of the Hair Metal Rules podcast, which will be out Thursday,
okay,
Tommy Rickard, the drummer for Vane,
awesome.
is on there, and I asked him the same question because when I talk to these guys from the '80s, I always want to hear stories about the Sunset Strip because that intrigues me. I
Of
would have loved to
course,
have. I would love to have walked that strip back in the
yeah,
day
yeah.
and experienced it. But he said the thing with them was no, San Francisco is where they were based out of,
Okay,
and they were into trash metal. They were into The Cure and bands like that. They came to the Sunset Strip to get a taste of what it was really like, but they mainly stayed up in the northern part of California.
that's interesting.
And that's why I thought Vane was bigger than they were, but he's like, we were right on the outside of the bubble with Motley Crue. We never made it inside the bubble.
No, I know,
No.
but the record, that record
Oh,
especially, I love that record. And it's interesting when you think about the Bay Area at that time, it was a lot of thrash and a lot of metal,
yes,
of course, Metallica, but you also had Testament, and you
yes.
had, there was a lot of thrash going on that sort of dominated that scene a little bit. So they would have been an interesting band in that scene as well, you know. And for me, what's weird is when all that stuff was happening on the Strip, I'm actually about 10 years younger than those guys are. So I wasn't around, loved all the music, and then when I cut my teeth was when I got to New York City in the 90s. And so my scene was a little different. And I heard all that stuff and loved all that stuff. I'm a huge Motley Crue fan. You know, and of course I like the British stuff, you know, White Snake, Deep Purple, Iron Maiden, Judas Priest, all that stuff. But then I was also very much a product of that punk and that pop punk stuff like Joan Jett and the Blackhearts, for example, or the New York Dolls or Johnny Thunders or David Johansen, things that were happening at the time. You know, Chris Spedding on guitar, a lot of that rockabilly, a lot of blues, and it was a little. The music was a little grittier, you know, and so when I present my version of that, my Lower East Side style now, it's a little bit prettier because I do have that influence, that Sunset Strip in my DNA too, right. Even though I physically never got there, you know. That was happening when I was like, you know, in elementary and junior high school. But you know, like the first records I bought with my own money were either Southern rock records like Molly Hatchet, Flirting with Disaster, or it was like Shout at the Devil, or it was Pyromania, you know, and you know, I didn't have much bread, so I had 4 or 5 records, and those are the ones I listened to again and again and again and again, you know, until I got until wider exposure. You know, you'd go over your buddy's house and his older brother'd be playing something, and you'd be like, oh man, you know, what is this? You know, right. This is Bark at the Moon, man. This is Ozzy Osbourne, you know, and like, and that's the first Ozzy I heard. And I'm one of these guys that, like, it's no disrespect to Randy Rhoads. Randy's phenomenal. My favorite Ozzy album is Bark at the Moon. It's also the first one I ever heard. And I absolutely love Jake's playing. Ultimate Sin also. You know, to me, you could flip a coin. Ozzy's had some of the best guitar players. He gets who he wants in his band, right? So that's how that's been. And Zakk Wylde, of course, is from South Jersey. I think he's from the Jersey Shore. And so right now I live in North Jersey, about 15 miles from the East Village where I used to live. I moved outside of New York. We got married and had kids, decided to raise our kids in the burbs, but I can be in this city in a really quick shot. And Zakk was around. Zakk was a kid. He's a little older than I am, but he was a kid making a name for himself. He was 17, and we would hear about him. You know, he'd be at, you know, the local Sam Ash demoing a guitar, or there's this guy, Zakk Wylde. And when Ozzy hired him, it was like, wow, you know, we won. It's a local guy won. You know, we all feel like, you know, holy shit, you know, one of our guys now, you know, big time.
He brought a whole different sound to Ozzy from what Jake had.
Yes.
He's
a busier player, and he's got a heavier, a muddier sound to him.
Because when Perry Mason came out and Crazy Babies,
that's
some good. Those are some good tunes. You know, like you said, Ozzy's always picked and choose who he wanted, and it's always worked out for him, which is a good thing. So
even that last album he put out, Patient Number 9, I think that is a phenomenal record. I think it's his best record in years. And he did, you know, typically what guys do later on in their career, right? He had everyone he's ever liked and played with on the record. So you got Tony Iommi on it, of course, you know. I'm a left-handed SG player. And so for me, it's like, you know, Tony Iommi, you know, Angus Young played in SG. Like, I'll play other guitars from time to time, but my main guitars that I play are SGs. He's got some great, and my favorite song on that Ozzy album, and I'm going to say it's my favorite song, and I can't remember the name of it, but that's my mush going on up here is the one he does with Clapton. Just amazing. And I thought it was an unusual pairing when I read about it. I listened to the song. I'm like, this is phenomenal. And I had forgotten how bluesy a singer Ozzy could be. But when you think about some of the early Sabbath, Wizard and a lot of that stuff, a lot of that is heavy blues,
Sure. Yeah. Well, you were talking a minute ago about the music, like in the 80s, early 90s. It was just fun, party,
Yes.
sing about girls, that music.
You look out at the audience, and it's every kind of person, and it's men and women, guys and chicks, we're having a party. It got to the point where hair metal morphed into like grunge or like type of metal, right?
Yeah.
You look out at the audience, and a lot of times it's a sausage party, bro. Like, I hate to say it, but like, if I want to hang out with a bunch of dudes and crank tunes, I can do that on poker night, man. Like, right. These concerts where we met, where we went with a group of friends and it was mixed, or if we went with the dudes, we were looking to meet some ladies that night, and we knew they'd be there. Yeah. I went to a Billy Idol show just a couple of years ago at Radio City Music Hall in New York City. There were more beautiful women at that show than there were guys, and he's playing a lot of tough music, Rebel Yell, White Wedding, whatever else. But he's also got a lot of fun to him, Moni Moni, the old Tommy James cover, and his banter with the audience, and the way that Billy doesn't take himself too seriously, and that he's a rock star, but he's also a regular guy. Alice Cooper's got a similar attitude. You go to shows like that, and it is a mix of every kind of person, all age groups. And that's the thing, you got to pass the torch. There not only has to be younger bands, but there has to be younger folks that appreciate this music that came before them, get it into their DNA, and then begin to emulate it in their own way. And that's how the sound changes and evolves and doesn't get stuck, it's just something I noticed, man. You go to a Pantera show, love Pantera, but it's all dudes. Same, Slayer, I hate to say it, Anthrax. You get a bunch of ladies at Metallica, but the ratio's way off. But there are still bands that you go to see, even if you want to, go earlier in, the Stones, right? It's everybody's at the Stones. Everybody's at these Motley Crue shows. Those stadium shows when it was Poison, it was Joan Jett, Poison, Def Leppard, and Motley Crue. How do you not have fun, right? Yeah. I mean,
we went to that.
Yeah. How do you not? Yeah. And people are like, oh, Vince's voice is shot. Listen, again, he's Vince fucking Neil. He's one of the greatest lead singers of all time. He gets up there. He's fun. He's a good master of ceremonies. Everybody's singing along with the songs anyway. Leave him alone. I'm grateful that Motley Crue is still out there doing what they do, because when you look at the list of highest grossing tours, I don't have to see the top 10 is all Taylor Swift, because I also see Motley Crue in there, and I see the Stones in there, and I see rock and roll in there, and there's nothing wrong with what Taylor Swift is doing either, but let's get some variety going. And really, like you're echoing to, some positivity with the music. You can be tough and you can have a message, but your message is respectful. And at the end of the day, the music, the melodies are fun. And I find when you have a catchy melody, no matter what you're singing about, no matter what message you're delivering, people are so much more likely to listen to the lyrics and to hear what you're saying if you're not, trying to blast them out of their seat, being as loud as he can be and everything else. And bands with catchy melodies like Def Leppard. I've never seen so many Def Leppard shirts in my life, brother. You walk around right now. I've got a 14-year-old daughter, and my rule is to her, because she's got Def Leppard shirts, Ramon shirts. Of course, she's got the Mark Duda shirts. I tell her, if I see you with that shirt on, you better be able to name a few songs, because that's the one thing that drives me nuts. I wore this Motorhead shirt and I was a dirtbag for doing it. Now people wear the Motorhead shirt and it's high
Yeah.
fashion, right?
Yes, fashion nowadays.
Don't.
Yes.
So if you're going to co-opt the fashion, take a listen to why that's around and what's so cool about it. Because it's more than just the imagery. It's more than just looking like a rocker, like Machine Gun Kelly or something.
Yes.
Figure out why rock and roll culture has been thriving the way it is. Because if you think about it, rock and roll, a lot of people think, around 56, maybe 55, 56, where you start to hear real rock and roll, Buddy Holly, Elvis, Little Richard, um, a lot of those guys. We're talking 70 years is nothing in the course of history. Rock and
Sure.
roll is a young genre and it's been through a lot of changes, but
Oh
you
yeah.
still will listen to new artists, whether it's me or whether it's this band I had on my podcast last week, and you'll hear stuff that you're like, oh wow, it sounds like Little Richard, or oh, this guy's influenced by Buddy Holly. I hear the hey, and all that kind of stuff, and it all comes from somewhere. And rock and roll culture, I think, took a little bit of an evolutionary hit a little bit in the 2000s. I think things started to stagnate and sound the same a little bit. The people kind of got stuck on that grunge sound, got stuck on this let me scare you thing, let me paint my face. Nothing
Yeah.
wrong with that. I'm a Kiss, I'm an Alice fan, but let me, you know, all of these sort of negative and gory sort of theatrics and death themes, and people began to associate all of metal sort of with that, and I think it turned people off. And so when a guy like me or a guy like you says hair metal, a lot of kids don't know what that means. Well, what it means is, Def Leppard and Motley Crue and Vane and the Bullet Boys and Babylon AD and Shark Island and Leatherwolf and all of it, bro. Honeymoon Suite,
Honeymoon Suite.
April
Yes.
Wine, Triumph, it's all of it. And I think, from the late 70s to the late 80s, you give me that decade from like 78 to like 88, how much music changed and how it just became who can have more fun, and
Right.
it went away too quickly, man. Like that I don't understand why the mood of the nation was ready for a lot of that negativity. And it's not bad music, but for example, you take Pearl Jam, Eddie Vedder's not, he's technically not a very good singer. He's got a range that's horrible if you compare it to the guys that were singing, a guy like David Coverdale or a guy like Vince Neil
Right.
back in the day or whatever else. A lot of the music was drop tuned, which makes it sound kind of dark.
Mm-hmm.
And that persisted to me for too long. And I'm not afraid to say I don't care for much of it. Now, I think like Pearl Jam as a band, if I were to mute the vocals, I would have think it was great. And if I put a different vocalist in there, I'd probably listen to him. But I get about 5 seconds of Eddie Vedder and I can't take it anymore. And I think music sort of lost the value of the lead singer a little bit. I don't mind Smashing Pumpkins, but I don't think Billy Corgan can sing very well either. It used
No.
to be that to be the lead singer of the band, you better be damn good,
You better be able to belt it out, hit the high notes.
Yeah, and it used to, and
Yes.
now it became, well, anybody in the band, you sing, I'll sing, who cares? We don't need a real lead singer. We'll just whoever's in the band will sing, and it sort of became devalued. And to me, the vocal is the lead instrument, and that goes to me back to doo-wop, back to even the power of somebody like Little Richard, or the melody of somebody like Buddy Holly, or the swagger of a guy like Elvis Presley. I think the vocal track is the most important track in the mix, and producers lost that along the way. Not all of them, but some of them did.
I just think, the grunge thing. I mean, I guess during the time, the whole hair metal genre kind of smothered itself out in a way, because you had 5 bands that looked just alike, that sounded a lot alike.
Interesting point too.
I mean, I hated to see it end. When grunge came along, I think that's why I kept holding on to hair metal, because when my daughter was like, she's 20, she'll be 25 in October. When she was 2, she got in the car with me and got in the car seat. She was listening to XYZ. She was listening to Heaven's Edge. She was listening to Leatherwood.
XYZ, Terry Lou. Yeah, yeah.
That's what she
There's a
was
singer.
listening
That's
to.
a singer,
Yeah,
right? Great
that's what I'm
White.
saying. Yeah, yeah, Great White, and she loves that music to this day. And I'm proud that she's one of those that she listens to anything, which I that's fine. You're 25 years old. I can put Def Leppard in there, and she knows every word to every song. I can
And appreciates it, right?
You know, I didn't start listening to any kind of rock music. I think the first modern kind of rock I listened to was, I actually liked Papa Roach.
Yeah, they're not bad. They've got some good songs.
Yeah,
They've actually got some good ballads, which a lot of people,
yeah.
you know, and those are some of their hits. But Papa Roach is an interesting band because they can hit you hard and soft. There's a range to them, and the dude can sing.
Yeah,
that's there too.
It was a good guitar. It was a good guitar riff in the songs, you know.
But it's fun, right?
Words.
But
it's fun. Yes.
So, and there's some things about this whole grunge scene that drive me nuts also, whereas some of these bands got labeled grunge because they, like Alice in Chains, you know, they're a heavy metal band. They were around, you know, 7-8 years before any of the, you know, grunge stuff came about. And they're a rock band they happen to be from the Northwest, but they have nothing in common with, you know, Nirvana, who in my opinion sound more like the Pixies than a lot like the Pixies. And they had the same producer. So I never thought Nirvana was as original as they were given credit for example. I thought they sounded a lot like the Pixies. I never thought Stone Temple Pilots was a grunge band. They're a rock and roll band, you know, but they kind of got lumped in there. And I think, you know, when I think grunge, first and foremost, I think Pearl Jam, I think Nirvana. I never liked either of those bands. And so, and I was and at that time, you know, I would say, if I'm going to go outside the box and do something different, let me go to a Chili Peppers show, because again, I got guys and girls, I got fun, right? I don't want to hear about how sad somebody was or how a kid that got picked on in elementary school killed himself. I understand that shit goes on, and it's okay if people want to write songs about it. But to me, again, music lifts me. That's the purpose that it serves in my life. A couple of purposes: to lift my mood and to remind me of times in my life that were happy as well. So it has that nostalgic feel to me, where like I love new music. That's why I'm making new music, and there are new bands that I listen to that I think are great. When I put on some of these records that you're talking about, it reminds me of that, of cruising around with my buddies, going to the shows, you know, trying to meet chicks, you know, trying to sneak in after curfew, working jobs I hated just to save up enough to buy the record, taping songs off the radio. I'm so glad you brought that up. And I remember sometimes I'd be taping something off the radio. Like I really liked Twilight Zone by Golden Earring, and I taped it off the radio, and the DJ was talking like 30 seconds into the song. He would not shut the hell up, and it drove me nuts. And I remember I sat there for like another month, like, I'm going to get a clean recording of this song if it kills me, you know, because sometimes you get that. The DJ wouldn't shut up and the guy be singing already. And oh man, you know, taping the stuff off the radio because you didn't have the bread to buy it. Maybe you didn't even know who it was to ask, you know, at the record store, you know. And, you know, I don't know if you had this by you, but we also had like, you know, on our TV, right, it went from channel 2 to 13. And I didn't grow up with much money, and my family didn't have cable TV or anything. But on the regular television set, there was also the UHF channels, the ultra high frequency. So there was a channel called U68 that I would get up in northern New Jersey. all they played was metal videos. I remember the first time I heard "See You in Hell" by Grim Reaper. It's the second time I'm mentioning that song, which is amazing. "We Are the Cult" by Chastain, you would hear. And
you
some
didn't see
Canadian metal,
Chastain.
that's where I'd hear like April Wine, but you'd hear this metal of bands that never made it, and they weren't even good enough to be like, they were still waiting to be played on Headbangers Ball, and when you tell me about like if the planets were in alignment and you could get it in, it was the same thing, man. It was ultra high frequency. We're messing with the antenna. We got the roll of tinfoil out there. We're making a rope of it, sticking it out the window, just so we could hear, just so we could hear Bang Tango, or whatever it was, man.
Standing on one foot,
those
holding
are good memories.
Standing on one foot, holding the rabbit ear, hoping it'll reception.
And those are good memories, though. They really are.
That's the whole purpose of my Instagram. Started out as something small, and I'm proud of my Instagram account. I really am.
I am too, man.
It started out small, and I enjoyed it. Like, what about Bang Tango? What about Lillian Axe? What about I'm thinking of all these bands. What about the band Sword that's got Rick Hughes in it, and he went on to play in a band called Saints and Sinners that came out at the late 90s.
Oh, yeah. Speaking of Saints, how about Armored Saint,
Yeah, right.
How about Laz Rocket? You know what I mean?
Right.
Lizzie Borden, bro.
Lizzie Borden, yeah.
You're filling a space that's needed. See, that's what you're finding, I think, why your channel has grown so fast. You got a certified channel on Instagram, which is awesome. And you have guys like me that love it. So it's mutual. Like, I'm glad you discovered my music, and I'm glad I discovered your channel, because it's just more happiness, brother. And not to be corny about it, but honestly, it's another smile in my day. And we all could use all we could get, right? The way the world is.
I'm like you. I like seeing comments every now and then. You'll get some putts that's like, well, I really don't agree, blah 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 blah. Well, I don't like what you post. Well, if you don't like what I post, it takes you 2 seconds to remedy that situation. Unfollow me.
That's right.
It's not going to hurt my feelings whatsoever. No. If you do that, it's your prerogative. I'm not into Slayer. I'm not into Corrosion of Conformity. I'm not into steel metal. Yes, it is, but I'm not. I like King Diamond.
Oh, me too. Merciful Fate, all of it. Yeah, love it.
I love.
But there's a real singer. See, that's kind of the thread. And when you talk about hair metal and you talk about melodic hard rock, which is a lot of what you play, one of the threads to that is you like vocalists, you like good singers.
I like Celtic Frost came out with an album in the 80s called Cold Lake. And
the pink and black one, man. That's a good fucking record, though.
Oh my God. I thought, and they wanted to go sleaze rock. They wanted to go sleazy.
It failed for them, but I think that's their best record.
I love that Juices Like Wine, Mexican Radio. Yes. Oh my, I'm like, but I can't find that on iTunes for the simple fact is his name is Thomas Warrior.
He wants to erase it from his past. It's not tough enough for him. Who cares, But
if they would put it on iTunes, instead of telling how much money he would make. But
call it a different band and re-release it and see what it does. Put some promotion behind it. You're right. That's a gem. Well, it's like my favorite Black Sabbath album is Born Again. It's the only one Ian Gillan sang on. Right. That's my favorite album. A lot of people don't like it. I think it's a masterpiece. I think it's a predecessor of all the doom rock that came after it. I absolutely love it. And what's funny is I'll post something about that. I sing for another band I'm trying to get together now, a heavy band called August Fire. I'll post that band and I'll write masterpiece, and I'll get tons of people like, holy shit, yes, it is a fucking masterpiece. And then you'll get one guy that'll be like, it's mixed like shit. And I'll be like, scroll on, buddy.
Yeah, right.
It's all right. But I like some unusual things like that too. And sometimes it's the chances that bands take that you end up with something really special. Like that Cold Lake album, like the Born Again album. I mean, whether or not you like Deep Purple or or Ian Gillan in general. He's again singing. He's an operatic level singer.
Well,
Tremendous singer.
people are so affixed, and what you'd say in the South, people are so choir about things. Well, that's not Poison. I don't know why they didn't. It doesn't sound like everything. Can't sound like Look What the Cat Dragged In. If every
No,
one of your albums sounded just like Look What the Cat Dragged In, you're not going to go very far in life if you don't change up your sound. You don't have to
absolutely. But
completely.
they've got a little country and they've got a
Yeah,
little rockabilly in what they do, and that comes down to the guitar playing and the singer.
but you don't
Um,
have to completely go away from what you started. It's funny.
no,
On one of my podcasts, I was talking about some of my favorite bands. But anyway, I read in a book that when Cinderella's Night Songs came out, that's not what they wanted. They wanted Cinderella to sound like Long Cold Winter.
which is a much bluesier record.
That's what, but to make money, get you on MTV, get you on a slot with Bon Jovi on the
Shake Me,
Slippery When Wet
Nobody's
tour.
Fool. You're right.
That's the and that Skid Row, they wanted their sound to sound like Slave to the Grind
Right.
instead of their very first album. But
But what a great album that first album is,
yeah,
18 in Life.
I remember you.
Youth Gone Wild. And
Yeah,
I tell you, because I know that Baz was born in Canada, but he's lived in Jersey for a long time. My wife and I met him on the boardwalk a few years ago. I said, I think that's Sebastian Bach. And he looked at me, I looked at him. I actually had a Pantera shirt on, and he said, I toured with those guys. And I was like, I thought that was you, man. We shook hands. I saw the Youth Gone Wild tattoo on his arm. He was
right.
getting a cheesesteak hero, and so was I. And he was like the most down-to-earth, nicest guy on the planet. Didn't think who he was or anything. And to me, he's a tremendous talent. I wish those guys would bury the hatchet, brother. I don't know what happened, but that's one of those bands where it's a shame. Skid Row needs a singer now. These
Mm-hmm.
guys they just can't make it work. I don't understand.
And their singer didn't need to be Lizzie Hale from Hailstorm.
No, no. And that was 4 shows or whatever, but
Yeah.
that definitely doesn't help. And look at the places they're playing. They're playing the Whiskey a Go-Go. When they were touring with Baz, they were playing arenas. Aren't you guys hungry for that again? I
Yeah.
mean, the fans want it. It's 30 years now, man. How about Water Under the Bridge? And I think about that with some of these bands, but maybe no band more so than Skid Row, because they had like the 3 records, right? There was the first one, and there was Slave to the Grind, which debuted at #1, and people were surprised at how heavy it was. And then there was the third one. It has like a bluish cover with like a zipper going across. So I forget the name of it, but all those records sold. They sold the shit out of those records. Sebastian's not selling a lot of records. Skid Row's not selling any records. I don't understand, certainly from a business perspective, you only have so much of a shelf life, but also from a perspective of, you guys were brothers at one time. There was something about you guys that made you love each other and the music enough to make those records. And I know that they couldn't have hated each other at that time, because when you make a record, I've made 9 albums with 3 different bands. It's all about the hang. If the hang is good and you guys are getting along and you're cracking jokes, I always tell people I could bust rocks all day if I could turn to the guy next to me and have a couple of laughs. So if you're in the studio and you're having a good time, it comes through on the record, and the records are great. So there was a time when those guys did get along, and maybe it won't be the same again, but it seems to me like they haven't tried. Like there's so much hatred there on the part of I think it's Rachel Bolan and Dave Sabo, that they won't even talk to Baz. So I don't know what that's about, but I wish like hell those guys would talk again. They would find themselves right on that tour with Motley Crue, Def Leppard. They'd find themselves in stadiums and arenas again. And
it's like this. If I was and I don't mean this in the worst possible way, but if I was not necessarily a lesser known or washed up type artist that was huge 30 years ago, and somebody approached me and got us all in the same room, if you guys will get together, there's $3 million a piece in it for you to go on a 50-state tour. If you guys can get your differences in order, go back to it's like what you just said, go back to doing what you loved doing 40 years ago, and you can make a crap ton load of money that you won't never have to worry about speaking to each other ever again if you don't want to. I would jump on that. So
would I.
Oh my goodness.
That's right. It doesn't make sense. And I don't want to hear that those guys don't need the money. They do.
Sure they do.
You know,
of course.
Because that was a long time ago, and I know what the record companies take, and I know that if you don't kill it at the merch tent, you don't make much money on tour. Even, you know,
I was talking to David Reese the other day. He played in a band called Bangalore Choir, and he played on Generation Clash. He sang for a Sept at one time. He said their album was released. Bangalore Choir is a great album. Anyway, they came.
I gotta check that out. Bangalore Choir.
Bangalore Choir, yes.
I'll check it out.
It's pieces of the band Hurricane Alice. And David Reese is the lead singer, and he sung in some other bands. But he made the comment I thought was pretty interesting. He said, we came in at the end, ever so many $100,000 or maybe $1 million video. But yet, if your records don't sell, you don't recoup the money for the video. So you're pretty much dead in the water.
You owe money. Yeah, these people that they get millions of people see them on tour, they'll end up the tour and they owe money. And you'd be surprised at guys that have regular jobs, most of them. You know what I mean?
Right. Oh, yeah.
Unless the other thing is, if you held on to your publishing, which a lot of the record companies had you sign that over, if you held on to your publishing and you have stuff that's still being played on the radio, well, then you can get checks and you can earn a decent living. But so many of these guys that never saw any money before said, okay, I'll take 50 grand. You can have my publishing, whatever, Bang Your Head or Metal Health or whatever, these songs are, making $1 million in royalties in every year. And Kevin DuBrow died in a hourly motel, ODing with $1 in his pocket, a lot of people were taken advantage of, and if they weren't taken advantage of, they weren't properly advised that most of the money's in the publishing, and that when you make a video that, when a record company says, we want you to make this video, you're borrowing that money from the record company, and you're typically borrowing it with interest. It's like you borrowed it from the bank. And if you don't pay it back, you don't make any money. And at the end of these tours, these guys are doing solo acoustic shows on a Wednesday night at their regular bar, passing the hat around so they can eat,
That's what we enjoy. Try to go to M3 every year. That is such a great festival. There's so many
really classy festival. Yeah.
Yeah. And I see bands that I've never seen in my life, but I've been listening to for 40 years, and it's great. It might not, like I've said before, it may only be one original member of the band, like Y&T. Dave Menichetti's about the only.
What a talented dude, man. Summertime Girls, all that. See, that's that stuff, man. That's the fun stuff.
But it's like what you were talking about a few minutes ago. When you go to M3, you see 60-year-old people, you see 50-year-old people, you see a 10-year-old kid out there because they've heard their parents playing some hair metal on the radio, and they're there to see it.
And they know the words.
Yes. But then you get, I know Queensryche played, and I was very impressed because you never hear their very first EP, and you never hear The Warning played anymore. They played the first EP in its entirety, and they played all of The Warning.
Wow. And concert. Todd can really sing. He really does it justice. And you wouldn't think so, because everybody used to be, Jeff Tate. You didn't think there was another guy, but Todd LaTorre is phenomenal. I seen him open for Judas Priest. Now, I didn't see that set. That's an incredible set you're talking about.
But that's their tour this year.
Wow. I'll have to try and catch them.
And all I saw was people fussing because now they did play toward the very end of it. They played a couple of like 3 songs. They played Jet City Woman, they played Operation Mindcrime, and they played another one. But to sit and hear that, I'm like,
my favorite is Rage for Order, and that makes me a little bit of different. That's my favorite Queensryche album to this day, and it's a really, really super original record. Love
it too.
Yeah.
Mindcrime is my favorite because I wore about 12 treble tracks out on some cassette tapes listening to that.
Tremendous record. No argument there.
But Rage for Order, I've said on one of our podcasts before, if you ever listen to the song, it's called New Regale. It's
tremendous song. Yeah, Reach for a New Horizon, that whole.
Yeah. Listen to it in headphones, and there's a whole nother melody playing up under everything. And I was like, well, I've never heard that before. And
New Regale is a terrific song, man.
Oh, yeah, it's great.
And of course, the first thing I heard of Walk in the Shadows is just a stone cold hit, right? Yeah. That is a hit, you know? But then you get into stuff like New Regale, which is very, very interesting stuff, man. Very talented band, Queensryche.
Yeah, Michael Wilton and Chris DeGarmo, they were one of the best. I mean, you talk about
Rockenfield too.
Yeah,
so much talent in one band, you know.
Excuse me, great band.
It's a Spanish grocery store that you see a lot of in New York City, Bodega Flowers. And the song is about being in trouble with my wife and bringing her some Bodega Flowers, but there were some other things over in that neighborhood where the bodega was, where she said to me, "I know what you were over there doing. Fuck you and your flowers." And so that's about. And Black Eyed Susan is about a friend of mine who was a heroin addict, and it is a happy song about a sad topic.
Let's do it.
That album, every song on Bodega Flowers is about an experience that I had when I lived on the Lower East Side of New York. And the sound of the record is the way it is because I felt that's how it was best communicated with the sounds of that time. And it's worked for me. These last two, The Month of Sundays and Bodega Flowers, they've sold more than the albums I did with my bands, and rolling on with another one. And I can't wait to be back here telling you about the other ones. And I'm glad you like those songs, man. They're
Well, I've been sitting here. I
special to
had
me.
doing the podcast. You record the. I only keep the audio portion of it, but I do have the video if like I ever have a YouTube channel. But that's kind of putting too many eggs in the basket for me right now. Trying to learn how to do a podcast and getting it to sound good. But anyway, I was sitting here doing the guy from the bass player from Lynch Mob, and I had another one. I was put Reggie Wu from Heaven's Edge. I talked to him last week, so I was trying to put those together, and I put it in. I was listening to it, and I think I listened to
Bodega Flowers, yeah.
I put that on repeat. I'm like, that's you talk about catchy melodies.
Thank you very much.
That one's got a catchy melody. I got to let my wife listen to it when she gets home today. She's going to like it too. So,
all right, tell me what she says. All right,
I most definitely will. I'll hit you up in a message and tell you about it. Well, man, it's been a pleasure meeting you. I know you got better things to do than we're actually moving. So,
I could talk to you all night, brother. And it's been a pleasure getting to know you. And we'll cross paths at some point soon, I'm sure. But thanks very much for appreciating my music and for bringing me on the show.
And thank you too, sir. And I hope you have a good rest of your day. God bless you and good luck in everything you're getting ready to do. And we'll keep in touch. That's not a problem.
You got it. God bless, brother. Be good.
Bye-bye, sir. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's podcast. Mark Duda is just the coolest guy. I first met him on Instagram. He had a post. He was, the first so many people that hit me up, I'll send you a Mark Duda t-shirt. And he sent me one, and we've talked back and forth and shared music. And his phrase is play it loud. I guess this kind of music, the only way to play it is loud. Mark's style of music, if you listen to the two songs that were played on here, there's so many things you can find in his music, so many styles that resonate throughout the music. Mark's a great guy. If you haven't heard him before, go on his website, get his music. He's got several CDs on there, and the Bodega Flowers that we're talking about now, that CD is on there. Give him some support. He's a great guy. He's a great musician. Try him out. Listen to him. Go out of the box and try something a little bit different. It's rock and roll either way, guys. Well, folks, thank you so much for joining me again today. It's always a pleasure. The podcast is fun. I hope you guys are enjoying it. There's many more people that I have lined up to do interviews. I hope you find them interesting. I'm doing everything I can to try to make them a little bit better each time. Folks, you're all my friends, and I appreciate every one of you. I really do. Thank you all for joining, and God bless you. Take care.